So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the people of YouTube, it's Clements back on the mic, and you have clicked on today's video because you want to make your Warzone look absolutely spectacular. Today I'm going to be going over a few tips and tricks in the settings of Warzone on console. This will work for PC as well, but obviously PC have a lot more in terms of customization and stuff, in terms of display settings, graphics. You can tweak and change all sorts of different things on PC. You can run settings at like higher settings depending on the hardware that you are using and the hardware that you've got. So this will cover all platforms, but I'm going to be mainly focusing on console because I am actually on an Xbox One X, and I am also running this game at full 4K, or native 4K at least. I'm running the game at 4K on a 55-inch smart TV, also running it at HDR and at 60 frames per second on the Xbox One X. And this game with these settings looks absolutely fantastic, so I hope this really does help you guys out. A little disclaimer though is that obviously we are going to be focusing the most on getting the best display settings, graphical settings as possible. So some of these settings people might disagree with me on and may kind of interfere with gameplay and sort of, I don't know, just change things to how you used to, and it can affect gameplay. Things like motion blur we'll be going over, and that can also, you know, a lot of people don't like motion blur, a lot of people do. However, you can't argue with the fact that because it's kind of blurry, it can sort of hurt what you can and can't see in game when you're looking around and stuff, trying to find enemies on screen that are really far away, for example. But I'm going to be including these settings in the video because again we are trying to get the best display settings possible. If it looks pretty and enhances the way the game looks, then I'm going to include it in today's video. So just be aware that these settings aren't necessarily the best settings to be using when you're trying to, I don't know, drop 30 kills in a game, for example, if you know what I'm trying to say. So jumping into the meat and potatoes of today's video, and as I do say, we are quite limited here on console in terms of what settings we can tweak and stuff, but nonetheless I'm going to be trying to give you guys the best settings possible. So going into the options tab, going over to general, starting off with film grain, you want to turn that all the way off. It adds a sort of distorted sharpening filter over the gameplay, and it doesn't look that great. Okay, it looks it's very artificial, so we don't really need any of that. So moving down to colorblind type, you want to either set this to Deuteranopia or Tritanopia. Tritanopia is pretty cool. It looks probably better, it's slightly warmer colours, but I have noticed that it kind of alters certain colours, like the colour purple, it will turn blue and stuff like that, and I don't like that, so I want to see the correct colours on screen still. So I choose Deuteranopia and I usually set it to world, but you can either set it to world, interface, or both. I usually keep it at world just because I want to see. Basically, Deuteranopia sort of oversaturates the colours, it makes the game look a lot more vibrant, but I don't really want to see oversaturated, unnatural colours in menu screens. I only want to see it in game when I'm actually playing the game, so I keep it as world, but you guys make your own mind up and choose which colourblind type suits you best. If you are actually colourblind, then obviously use the correct colourblind type that you need. Now moving down to motion blur settings, you want to enable both world and weapon motion blur. Now like I said, this is a bit of a controversial setting, however I think it enhances the way the game looks, so I enable it. And like I have said, this can affect what happens in game. Like if you're moving too fast when trying to look around for enemies, you can potentially miss enemies that are aware. Say a sniper glint, you might miss because you're moving around too quick. So I mean, it isn't necessarily a disadvantage, but it's just something to be aware of. However, I think it makes the game look pretty. It looks really nice on my TV, so I enable the settings. Now moving on to a rather new feature or setting, whatever you want to call it, in Warzone, at least on console. I'm not too sure if this has been around on PC, but on-demand texture streaming, you want to enable this and you want to put it on high quality. Now what this does is it downloads textures as you play the game, and it'll download the highest quality textures possible. So whilst you're playing, your console is going to be pulling textures off the internet, texture packs, and whilst this can have a strain on the internet if you've got a poor signal, but for most people that do have a strong enough wired Wi-Fi connection, you want to enable this and put it on high quality for the best possible textures. And also you want to set the bandwidth to unlimited so it can pull unlimited textures from the internet and it's not capped, so therefore you're always getting the best textures shown. And now finally moving down to the brightness settings. Now as I did say, I am running my game on a HDR 4K display, so I have got HDR brightness settings, but essentially guys, what I recommend you guys do is you go slightly below the default value of brightness, just so it kind of adds a little bit more shadow detail to stuff. Things seem a little bit darker, a little more realistic. I kind of like the way it looks. Don't make it too dark, of course. Kind of set it to what looks good to you. You could potentially keep it to default. Just make sure you don't go any higher than the default value, because I don't know, when you kind of get in those higher values, the game kind of begins to look washed out if you make it too bright. So keep it at default, or maybe tweak it just a little bit lower than the default value. I think it looks really nice. And now that the rose skin's been nerfed, we don't really have to worry about anything like not being able to see the rose skin anymore. So yeah, have a little tweak, see what looks good to you. And then last but not least, in the same category as the brightness settings, we have the calibration. Now you obviously want to calibrate these settings to your unique display. Mine are correctly calibrated, and as you will see in the settings, you can actually see that the game does actually give you a few examples of what the game should look like and how things should be calibrated. The icon in the middle should be barely visible, and the one on the left should not be visible whatsoever, and the one on the right should be completely visible. So once you've changed and tweaked all these settings and you've correctly calibrated your TV, gaming monitor, whatever the display you're using actually is, it's correctly calibrated, you should notice quite a difference in the colours and the way that some of the operators and guns look. The online texture streaming feature does actually focus the most on operators and weapons. So you should notice, if you pay attention to detail, a few text changes on operators and guns that do look much better. I mean, they're kind of admittedly small changes, but I mean, every little helps. Like I've said, we are on console, so we are kind of pretty limited to what we can do here, so every little bit helps. So yeah, those are the best settings I recommend you guys change and tweak in Warzone on console to make your game look fucking beautiful. So if this did help, let me know by smashing the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you are new. I've been Clements, you've been absolutely awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out and take care.